I am a federal employee. Right now, I'm attempting to avoid retirement, at least for another couple of years. But I have always been proud to be a federal employee. Even when I'm talking to groups who don't appreciate federal employment as much as you do, or at least you should. I'm proud of this country, and our federal service is one of the things that has made this a great country. I think we should be investing more in the things that the federal government can achieve, our physical and our human infrastructure. Since World War II, it's the federal government that has played a critical role in expanding our middle class. And that's really the source of the strength of our economy and the cohesion of our society. It's the federal government that was able to bring about civil rights legislation finally, financial security for retirees through Social Security, and then health security through Medicare and Medicaid. And in fact, after World War II, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, a succession of presidents understood that they needed to use the federal civil service to build and strengthen this great country. And so, each decade, we invested about 20% on top of the foundation we had in our physical and our human infrastructure. And it worked. And in fact, incomes expanded by even more than that consistently. The last half of the decade of the 40s, through the 1950s, through the 1960s, through the 1970s. Things changed. I guess the departure point is about 1980, when there was an attitude, which is what you hear again today, that government is the enemy. That is not something that can help bring about a solution to our problems. It is the problem. And so people started running against our government, and in the process, in many ways, tearing down our country. I think we are the land of freedom and opportunity. But if you don't have a good education, you don't have the individual freedom to pursue all your opportunities. If you don't have a good healthcare system, provides quality healthcare, and that can be affordable for all, then you're wasting much of this country's potential. If you can't get back and forth between your home and your workplace, then in fact you're wasting resources that we can't afford to lose. And so you tick off those areas that make us strong, and you realize what an integral role the federal government has played in our lives. And I'm proud of all the technology sector, that all the technology sectors has achieved, particularly in Northern Virginia. But I'm disappointed that people don't realize that the whole concept of nanotechnology was developed by the federal government in basic research through the National Science Foundation and DARPA and any number of our research agencies. We wouldn't have the internet if it hadn't been for much of that investment in basic research. And so much of the technology that helps us continue to grow our economy in Northern Virginia came from our investment in military technology. I'm proud of all that. I understand all that. I know it's true. And that's why I stand here as an unabashed defender of our federal government. Because I know we would not be anywhere near as strong if it wasn't for the role of the federal service and the investment in our economy and in our society that we make through the federal government and through state and local governments. But local governments are inefficient in many ways. We rely primarily upon the property tax. The people who own the most property oftentimes, and thus pay the most tax, are the least likely to have children in the public school system. And oftentimes, the most children who need the most help in public education happen to be born in areas that don't have high property values. And so the government comes in as something of an equalizer. Not bringing about equal outcomes, that's not the government's role. And I don't believe in it. But the government can bring about equal opportunity, particularly in education. That's why the government plays a role in education, in gap filling and capacity building. Look at other countries like China and any number of other countries where their people won't spend money. China is desperate to get their population buying things, so they don't have to be so dependent upon the United States consumer, because they know we're not going to continue to be buying things at the rate that we did over the last decade particularly. But their people know. In a rural area, they save half of the income they can get their hands on because they have no financial security, because there's no safety net. In urban areas, they save about a third. And I've talked to the very highest levels of the Chinese government. They know the problem. They would like to put in a Social Security and Medicare system like we have. They can't afford it right now, but they understand that's what they need, is that financial and health security that we have. But the same ilk of people thought that. Go back to the congressional record. See what the political conservatives in our country were saying about Social Security and Medicare. It was turning us into a socialistic state, that they needed to defeat it. And eventually, we were successful, and now, from a political standpoint, it can't be eliminated. But this is what I'm proud to do, particularly given the fact that the federal civil service is us in the Washington area. Because they're our neighbors, they play an important role in our community, and we have a higher number of people that do understand, in fact, how important the federal government is to their lives and to the life of this great nation. Now, Jerry and I are very proud that we have a 100% voting record from NARFE's perspective. You would obviously expect that. We understand our constituency. It's up to Jerry and myself and Steny Hoyer and Chris Van Hollen and Eleanor Norton. They're the people that they turn to. Things don't happen that affect federal employees positively or negatively without going through us. And we will use our influence to continue to get military pay parity for civilians as well as the military. We'll continue to provide good retirement, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because we know that's what helps us recruit the quality of talent that we need serving all the American people in the federal civil service. Jerry plays the role that Tom Davis played in government reform. He's essential. Let me just mention that. So, if you have an interest in protecting your retirement and your civil service benefits, you kind of need to keep them there. But let me mention 3 things that we accomplished, things that I was the sponsor of, the principal sponsor. One is that for sick leave, if you're a FERS employee, everybody knows what FERS is. I trust I don't have to, this is one audience where I don't have to explain FERS and CSRs. That FERS people were being treated differently in terms of compensation for sick leave. So we equalized that. which was the right thing to do. Because otherwise, people were taking off 6 months before their actual retirement date, and just at the time they need to be training their replacements, they weren't on the job because they weren't going to get compensated. So we equalized. We also know we need to bring long-time experienced people back into the civil service, but they can only work part-time or want to work part-time, and if they did that, then their top three annuity calculation meant that their retirement was going to be severely reduced. So I fixed that. We fixed that as a sponsor. And then for people to come back into the government, first redeposit. So that you can pay back what you paid so that you don't get penalized for having retired and then coming back into the system. Many people go into the private sector and then come back. Those are the things that we have done. I'm being cautioned now that I've said enough. My time is up. I hope that's not entirely true, but I understand it is for today. But to the extent that I'm not retired, I intend to do what I've been doing, which is to defend this federal government, to continue to be proud of this federal civil service, and to continue to represent your interests in the United States Congress. Thank you.